All of our world leaders go to Antarctica and disappear for 3 days. Where are they going? Who are they talking to?
They want to move the world in one direction, almost like gods. And the rest of us are the stupid minions that have to be controlled.
And our government has been captured in the way that the Masons were captured back in the day.
They're mining precious metals down there by the ton. They just can't release them because it'll crash the world markets.
There are a great deal of spiritual knowledge and technology that they are keeping hidden. They're keeping for themselves.
What's happened to America? What's happened to our governments? What's happened to our medical institutions?
𝗦𝘂𝗯𝘀𝗀𝗯𝗲.
The people that we can see are the Council of Foreign Relations, the United Nations, the Bilderberg Group, Club of Rome, Royal Institute of International Affairs, and the Trilateral Commission. These are the people, unelected, that rule the world, that we see. They're getting their marching orders from others that we don't know of. Now, all of our world leaders go to Antarctica and disappear for 3 days. And then they show up back at the base at the weirdest times. Like John Kerry went on election day, 2 elections ago. They all go down there. Obama went down there. They all go there. Where are they going? Who are they talking to? We have some military guys that worked in Antarctica, a whole bunch of whistleblowers that are telling us all sorts of stuff. One guy, he's 94, 95. He said that he has a non-disclosure until he's 100. Great. But he said, what I can tell you is there's cities of millions of people in Antarctica not allowed to communicate with the inner world.
Wow.
We're the inner world. We're on the inside. So much information about Antarctica coming out. We have the Antarctic Treaty that you're not allowed to drop a cigarette butt there, right? Because they want to keep the ice pristine. But there's mining operations going on there where they're digging giant holes and dumping the refuse and waste in there and sewage and just they bury it and then they dig another hole. This has been going on for decades, right? But they don't want you to know about that. They're mining precious metals down there by the ton. People are like, there's only a certain amount of gold in the world. There's more gold in Antarctica than probably everywhere else in the world, but they don't want you to know that. One of the things they told us is, I think it was back in the early 80s, they released a ton of the platinum that they were mining out of this base. And it crashed the platinum market. Platinum used to be more expensive than gold. In the 80s, it was like $1,000. And bam, it dropped to like $250 when they did that. So they're like, they have all of these precious metals now, and they just can't release them because it'll crash the world markets.
Our leaders are headed to Antarctica for a few days at weird times, but the marching orders or the proper orders are coming from...
This is just speculation. I don't know.
We don't know, right? So that's where our block is.
People are like, well, who are they? I don't know. It could be the fallen angels. It could be the Nephilim. It could be, we don't know. There could be the giants could still be there. We don't know. We can speculate. I love speculating, but I always make it clear that I'm not making any claims. I'm just making suggestions.
I honestly do believe, from everything I understand, everything I heard from heaven and everything I've heard here, there's a group of very powerful, wealthy families, about 2,500 so families, globalists, and they want to move the world in one direction where they are like the pharaohs of old, almost like gods. And the rest of us are the stupid minions that have to be controlled, just like a shepherd herding the sheep. They feel that they're superior. They're actually the opposite. They're low vibration. So you mentioned earlier that people don't want war. Yes, I have heard that from heaven. For the first time in a long time in history, the bulk of the people are against war. We want peace, and the leaders are trying to drag us into old consciousness. It is my firm belief there are a great deal of spiritual knowledge and technology that they are keeping hidden. They're keeping for themselves. We're not worthy. The humans don't deserve this. We're the only ones smart enough to deal with this. Or we're keeping it to ourselves because we want to have the power over them. It's probably both. And so there's a lot of hidden technology, a lot of hidden spiritual knowledge that they're just not sharing. So for instance, I'll give you an example of this. Why would the globalists put in Hollywood movies, remember the Georgia Guidestones that were recently blown up, that were there for several decades, that talked about the globalist plan? We're going to reduce the world population. We're going to have a one world government, one world court. Why would they put their plan out there knowing how distasteful it is to the population? Well, the reason is because they don't want the karma. We told you what we were doing to you. You're not victims. You're willing participants, which is true. From heaven's perspective, there are no victims. Certainly there are victims from our earthly perspective, but every soul, before they come down here, they know the potentials. They know all the things that could happen. And so they do that so that the karma is not on them.
There are good people in these organizations, but the corrupted elements at the top, You could have brought on some Freemason guy or some Knight Templar guy who's going to say, I'm some Grand Master, as he believes. But the way secret societies work, you could read Adam Weishaupt's own writings about this shit. Let every degree feel like they're at the top. You think you're at the top, and the fact that you're on public podcasting means you're not near the top. Here's someone who was at the top, Duke of Brunswick. He was the Grand Master of German Freemasonry at the time. It was pretty much the World Council, okay, that he was a member of. And I got two quotes.
When are we talking? What time frame are we talking?
This would be 1700s, early 1700s. Okay. Yeah. Duke of Brunswick blowing the whistle and actually kind of freaking out about what he discovered. He said this: I have been convinced that we as an order, meaning we the Freemasons, have come under the power of some very evil occult order, profoundly versed in science, both occult and otherwise, and though not infallible, their methods being black magic, electromagnetic power, hypnotism, and powerful suggestion, which all indicate that their goal is a power over human consciousness. Then he says, we are convinced that the order is being controlled by some sun order, after the nature of the Illuminati, if not by that order itself. He's got one more thing. He says, we see our edifice, meaning our great Masonic hall, crumbling and covering the ground with ruins. We see the destruction that our hands no longer arrest. A great sect arose, which, taking for its motto, listen, the good and happiness of man, worked in the darkness of the conspiracy to make the happiness of humanity a prey for itself, meaning P-R-E-Y. This sect is known to everyone. Its brothers are known no less than in name. It is they who have undermined the foundations of the order to the point of complete overthrow. It is by them that all humanity has been poisoned and led astray for several generations. They began by casting odium on all religion. Their masters had nothing less in view than the thrones of the earth, and the governments of the nations was to be directed by their nocturnal clubs. The misuse of our order has produced all of the political and moral troubles with which the world is filled today. We must from this moment dissolve the whole order. So let me just summarize. He's calling for the worldwide shutdown of Masonry to quarantine the problem. That's how bad he saw it. The way he describes this whole process reminds me of when I was listening to 𝗦𝘂𝗀𝗰𝗀𝗲. I don't know if you saw that interview with 𝗦𝘂𝗀𝗀𝗲. This is from the 80s. I think he came in. It was G. Edward Griffin who actually brought him to America.
Yeah, I know.
He's a former KGB defector. Okay, 𝗦𝘂𝗀𝗰𝗀𝗲. And he basically came out to America and told them the plan of the Communist International, of how they're going to take America. And he gives you 4 stages, the 4 stages of ideological subversion. And it's how they play this sort of 5th generation asymmetrical warfare, right? So these aren't the alpha types. These are the more beta types that don't operate like overtly and go, okay, we're the new king. We're not like Genghis Khan. That's all gone. These are the people that get behind the throne like you're talking about, and they manipulate and they get their people in positions and they wear the costume and they play the game. But really they're working towards this other agenda, which is what he's describing here, somebody from the inside. And I've got like hundreds of quotes and snippets and writings in journals of these types of people talking about the same kind of concept, that they were taken over in the way that the communist regime would go in and infiltrate its enemy, pretend they are that, and then eventually overthrow and readjust the entire institution. So this is what's happened to our government. Our government has been captured in the way that the Masons were captured back in the day. And I would say our religious institutions, like we could get into a whole diatribe about how the Catholic Church at one time was working towards probably a better Western civilization and was much more, whether you agree with religion or not is separate, but they were actually infiltrated and overthrown by what we call the Red Papacy. The Communist International got their way in and infiltrated the Catholic Church. I think it happened probably before the French Revolution. What's happened to America? What's happened to our governments? What's happened to our medical institutions? I talk about this in my Cult of the Medics, that when I'm talking about the history of the corruption in Big Pharma, the medical mafia and all of that, I'm not throwing the odium on all doctors and everybody in the mix. I'm saying the institutions were captured by the Rockefeller interests and these other interests that had a different agenda. We were on a track in the West to have probably one of the most amazing advanced health systems ever, and it got co-opted by this infiltration process and deviated from its original track.